Hey, Kara Oosterhuis here with RealAgriculture.com. We are here. We have made it after doing these lives since, well, basically the start of COVID. We have wrapped up, well, almost. We still have to make it through today, but we have almost wrapped up our 2020 live season. So thank you very much for all of you who have tuned in and are tuning in right now. If you're on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, please be sure to put your comments and questions in the chat box down below, and we will get to them right away. So let's bring in today's guest here. We have Kristjan Hebert, who is a farmer in Fairlight, Saskatchewan. How's it going today?
Oh, pretty good. You?
Oh, it's going good. So you farm a fair amount of acres out there. Do you want to tell me a bit about your operation to start?
Yeah, so we're a family operation at Fairlight, Saskatchewan. As you said, we crop 25-ish thousand acres, depending on the year. Mainly canola, malt barley, hard red spring wheat, rye, peas, and maybe do some oats this year too, actually.
That's awesome. So before we hopped on live here, we were talking a bit about your operation and how you guys kind of handled the succession from your parents headed down into you and your brother. Can you talk a bit about that process?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, I when I first moved home, we maybe had 2,500 to 3,500 acres, and grew a little bit while I was doing my CPA at Myers Norris Penny. In 2008, 2009 is when I quit full time to come home. So when I grew up, we always had cattle and grain. We had a 1,500 head feedlot, 250 cows, and the grain farm. When I moved home to farm full time, my brother loves cows and I love grain. And neither one of us are huge fans necessarily of brothers in the same company, not because we don't like each other, but because we think you can have the most success if you're in control of your own destiny. So in '09, we split the farms up into two operations. Mom and dad are shareholders in both. And Kyle and I, we work together lots. I farm his land to get it ready for feed, just like it's part of our farm. He buys straw back and forth, and we do manure deals, etc. And we probably get along better now than we ever did when we were younger, to tell you the truth.
That's awesome. It's amazing how sometimes you just need to separate that business and family for sure. And Brian Voth has a comment here. He says, "What? No RealAg live playoffs to finish the season? That would be an interesting. Thing to do. Maybe next year, Brian, we will have a playoff season." So Kristjan, you were in January of this year of 2020. You were noted as the top producer of the year. Can you tell me a bit about that process and what that kind of meant to you?
Yeah, so I mean, it's an award given out for North America. It's mainly been American producers up to date. So I didn't know a whole bunch about it, other than I had some peers in the U.S. that had been nominated and won in prior years. But I got a call from Danny Kleinfelter actually to say that he nominated me. I'm not real big on awards, just because my team does a lot more than I could ever do for my farm, so they deserve all the accolades. But it's pretty tough when you get nominated by one of your mentors. So went through an interview process with the top producer group. We had a small application to fill in just for some verification, but most of it was interview based, and we got picked as one of the three finalists. So my wife and I and kids and my mom and dad met us down there, flew in for the event in Chicago, and they have a top producer show. I'd say it's pretty similar to Farm Tech or a crop production show, of which the highlight is when they announce the winner, and they do little videos on each farm. It was pretty humbling. My team was part of the video for me, and mom and dad and the kids were there. So to get selected, as I said, was pretty humbling, and just lets you know how important my team and Canadian agriculture really is to our farm, because that's what led us down the path to even have a shot at it.
Absolutely. So you talk a lot about your team. How do you select people to be on your team, and how many people do you have on it right now?
We usually run right around 7 to 8 full-time people plus dad and I on the farm operation side. We have a consulting side too that we run another 3 to 4 people, and they bounce back and forth between the two, because that runs our office and finance function. Kind of the normal metric I use is about one full-time person for every 2,500 acres, or we pay about 1.25 hours per acre that we farm, and that's how we run our hiring process. We run quite a few full or part-time, really good part-time people through the growing season. We'll add another 5 or 6, especially through harvest. We tend to select them little different method. I don't really necessarily care that they have an agriculture background. So we want to know that they fit the main, like our values of our farm, and that simple little concept called GWC. Do they get the role? Do they want the role? And do they have the capacity to do it? And they get scored on our values in those three items. And then their skill set is what I'm more interested in. So we have a couple individuals off the oil patch and a couple from New Zealand, and local guy. My farm manager came out of the grain handling industry, was there for 15 years and had 100 employees underneath him in a union before he came to help manage the farm. So it's more transferable skill sets that we like to hire on the farm, and then maybe train them to follow our playbooks, but just find that they can really teach us a lot about how we can do things different to hopefully be better.
Absolutely. So when did you start the consulting side of the farm? Like what made you decide that that was an important part to have?
Yeah, so way back, I mean, in 2011, Global Ag Risk launched, and I've been fairly involved with it in a board role and doing some advising to farms on risk management. So we used to do that kind of in-house, but then our farm just started growing so large, as well as the amount of people that wanted risk management advice. So we launched Maverick Ag, based in Saskatoon. So my CFO and partner Evan Shout runs it. I just kind of oversee it a little bit for ideas. He does all the work, and it does all of our CFO work for both our farm and another couple farms, as well as provides risk management and financial services to numerous operations. We just saw it as a real hole in the industry, that individuals were really looking for some advice around risk management as well as financial advice when discussing and negotiating with their banks. That led us down the path of launching it as well. It was something we wanted to make sure that we really stayed strong at as we grew, and ensured that the farm's here for a number of generations.
So Lara has a question here. She says, who handles your agronomy and scouting? Is that in-house or do you hire?
It's a bit of a hybrid. So my father, Louis, loves scouting and he's really good at it. So he does the majority of the scouting still, and kind of picks the chemistry we need to use on each field, as well as the day the sprayer needs to run, of which then it gets handed off to my farm manager. We've used a company out of Yorkton called AgriTactics for a number of years that does all our variable rate soil sampling, and we use kind of as an advisory board on our agronomy. I do all the crop planning, purchasing, etc. So as I said, it's kind of a joint effort, but our VR and our advisory is based out of a consulting group out of Yorkton, and then Dad and I do the rest.
So you mentioned a bit about being a director with Global Ag Risk Solutions, or most of you know it as GARS. Can you talk a bit about what is done there, and if somebody's never heard of GARS, what is it?
Yeah, so it's a private crop insurance company that insures gross margin. So yield times price minus seed, fertilizer, and chemical leaves you with gross margin, or what pays your bills. And that's the line item it insures versus just yield, which is what you'd see at AFSC or SCIC in Alberta and Saskatchewan. I think it helped fill a bit of a hole in the industry, that I think if you want to have proper risk management, you need to use a basket of products in order to get to the number that you're willing to lose. So on the worst case scenario, is it $10 an acre or $50 an acre, or is it 50,000 or $1 million that you're willing to lose on a bad year? And I think in most instances now, with a grouping of products, whether it be in Alberta, if you use your crop insurance product as well as some global ag and some agri-stability, in most cases, a lot of farms can get to a number that they're very comfortable with, and it's just a good option for people to look at as part of your risk management plan.
So looking forward into the 2021 season, are you looking at growing any different crops? Like when it comes to growing crops, do you specialize with certain crops? I guess we're kind of two questions there, but yeah, how do you handle that?
Yeah, so malt barley is kind of our baby, is the way I always tell people. We can, we're willing to grow up to 1,000 acres of combine of malt barley. That's kind of what limits us, but it's a big part of our rotation, and tends to be our biggest money crop. We kind of grow canola to be able to grow malt barley again, which is a little different than most farms. So canola, malt barley, some wheat are staples of the rotation, and then we slide in peas, hemp. Well, I shouldn't say hemp. I lost a Harvard degree to hemp last year. But peas, oats, and fall rye slide in and out of the rotation depending on what I can have forward marketed, and margins that I can have locked in into the future. So peas tend to be in the rotation pretty much every year in that 10 to 15%. And as I said, oats and fall rye just have a lot to do with what I can forward contract.
So Brian's got another question here. He says there was talk that the provincial crop insurance companies were coming out with a revenue insurance product, but have they actually?
No, so the FPT meetings a couple months ago obviously has created a bit of friction between the federal government and the provincial government. The federal government said they wanted to increase agri-stability and more or less, blamed it on the provincial government that they weren't willing to step up, but the liability that is something the provinces couldn't handle. So there's been a lot of talk, especially out of Alberta, for a public revenue or margin-based insurance to either go with or replace agri-stability. So far, it's just talk. I believe they look to work on it for July when the next round of meetings should take place, and it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to the marketing on your farm, do you take care of that mostly, or is there someone else that does that?
Yeah, no, I take care of pretty much all the marketing. We use a couple services just to gather information from. My farm manager came out of that industry too, so he's really strong at it. But I usually do the majority of the marketing and the trading around our futures account, etc. And then once I make the sale, then he'll take care of all the logistics and operational side of it.
So is there anything you do differently as far as marketing that you maybe want to share that lots of other farms maybe don't do?
Well, I think maybe just because of our team and we like to have more full-time staff on than most people, so we use trucks to keep more guys around full-time. So we'll determine sales a lot based on when there's a strong basis and the fact that we want our trucks to run X number of loads every single week, of which then I'll if I don't feel the cash price is where I want it, I'll replace it all with futures and we'll sell the futures when we deem the futures to be sold. So it's maybe a little bit different. I don't think there's a lot of farms trading futures, period, let alone really just selling basis in order to make logistics work and then dealing with the futures when the right time the futures is or hopefully right. But that would probably be how we do it different is we use sales to help keep our team busy too. So basis is what we watch for when the trucks are going to run. And then my futures account can be extremely active in order to hold crop over when we deem the futures to be sold.
Yeah, absolutely. Brian says, what percentage of your crop can you store versus how much has to be moved off the combine? How does that impact your marketing plan?
My bank was just asking this as we were doing my annual review. So I can store about 50 to 60% of my whole crop. As at the end of next year, we'll be closer to 80%. We're in the midst of a big bin expansion right now. It doesn't really affect my marketing plan off the combine at all. We've had up to 50, 60 grain bags. They don't really scare me as long as we can get them moved prior to February, hopefully prior to December. That's why we're expanding the vineyard even more. I do like to have some crop moved off the combine more for spreading out logistics than cash flow. We can cash flow it based on our banking setup, but it's nice on logistics side in order to have some of it moved. So I'd say in general, we try to move 10 to 20% off the combine. In a perfect world, it's mainly barley and a little bit of canola. And then we'll clean up bags into Jan and then everything else in bins after that. But we are expanding the vineyard. We've just found with the amount of tons we grow now, there's a lot of potential of profit when it comes to blending and drying and etc. that we can probably capture into the future.
Yeah. So what expenses, this is coming from Kent Erickson. He's asking what expense line item could be better managed by most producers or which one would be a surprise to most farmers as they budget for 2021?
We'll tackle the one that can be managed better first. So I think I group expenses into three categories. So gross margin expenses, which are your seed, fertilizer, chem, and risk management insurance. Then your labor, power, machinery. So, depreciation, custom work, leases, fuel, wages, repairs, etc. And then land building and finance, which is interest, rent, property taxes. So the grouping of labor, power, machinery is hands down the one that farms can focus on the most. When it comes to benchmarking, MNP would probably use about 140, 150 as a benchmark there. And we've seen it range everywhere from, as low as 100 to 110 on the really lean side to as high as 300. And when you look at that, an easy way to ask that question is how many more acres could I farm with the exact equipment I have if I just added one more human? And in that case, there's a lot of farms have 10, 15, 20% more capacity where they wouldn't change the days if they just spread their team a little bit different. So that's one to really focus on. I think depreciation, custom work, leases, that basket is something to keep really focused on when it comes to different ways to manage your equipment cost. One is to spread it across acres, obviously. The other is your utilization rate per hour. But even the financing side of equipment is changing so rapidly when it comes to leases and purchases, interest rates on both sides, and then even the timing of payments. So it's something that we would encourage people to have a better look at. For the second part, for surprises, I think one that usually surprises me is the volatility on income statements of both repairs and fuel. I think a lot of farms maybe don't pay a lot of attention to what those work out per acre, but we've seen volatility of at least $10 an acre in both of those numbers from farm to farm. But at the same time, probably the number one thing I would encourage people to look at is the cash flow side of principal payments on both land and equipment. As the cost of those things increase, the normal payout periods of 3 to 5 years on equipment and 10, 15, 20 years on land are starting to hinder cash flow on some farms, that I think the banking industry and agriculture need to look at how to maybe do that differently. And it'd be something that people should look at, that their cash flow side probably isn't necessarily matching up with what they think it is.
So when it comes to benchmarking, are there any specific ratios you recommend people focus on?
Yeah, so I mean, we focus on the per acre amounts when it comes to gross margin and labor, power, and machinery, and then I watch pretty closely working capital and debt service. Those are the two numbers so working capital percent and debt service. Those are the two numbers your bank are going to want to know and pay attention to the most, especially on a 3-year average. So those would be the 4 metrics I probably watch the most: would be working capital, debt service, both balance sheet metrics, and then gross margin and labor, power, and machinery as both dollars and percents on the income statement.
So oftentimes producers are like, we're talking about risk management so much these days. We're hearing it, but what is something you find people really miss when it comes to risk management on their farm?
Well, probably the number one thing they miss is 9 out of 10 producers, when I ask them, it's August 15th and it just froze and your crops basically ran zero. How much money did you lose? They can't answer the question. And so if you look at cost of production over the last 10, 12 years, it's virtually doubled. There's really only 2 types of farmers out there. There's those that have cost of production between $375 and $400 plus, and those that just don't know their cost of production or lie to themselves. And so if your current risk management plan only provides $200, $250, $260 of revenue, that means there's a lot of farms out there that in a what we call scorched earth scenario can lose $80 to $100 an acre. And in today's world, if you're an 8,000 acre farm, most can't handle a $500,000 to $1 million loss without it affecting how they farm in the future, right? They might have enough equity to handle it, but they'll buy a little less fertilizer, or they might not use fungicide the next year, or not hire that guy. And that tends to be expensive, right? The loss in the current year by having a bad risk management plan multiplies into the future years because you didn't have a plan. So I think that's the number one thing, is really be comfortable with how much money you can lose first, and then go to the premium side and the product side of what mix fits your farm. But that we tend to focus, I only want to spend $7 an acre or $15 an acre on risk management. And yet when we get to that budget, we can still lose way more money than both ourselves and our spouses are comfortable with, and most likely our banks. So we probably need to focus on that number first, and then work to the basket of products that allows us to do that.
Which kind of leads into my next question. Risk management and marketing. What sorts of things do you recommend for risk management when it comes to marketing on your farm?
There's a few ways to answer that question. So, I mean, I think I'm big on having a base risk management plan that, like I said, lets you know in the worst case scenario how much money you can lose. Because one of the most common misconceptions or reasons that people won't forward sell is they're worried about contract buyouts. Now, I agree that if you just have a one bad crop, there would still be a contract buyout. But if you're going to make a whole bunch of profit on your farm, and a contract buyout just makes you slightly less profitable, it's not usually a problem. It's the year where you've aggressively forward sold and it was the right decision at the time, but then your whole farm is in trouble and your revenue's down and you have contract buyouts. So it makes a bad year extremely bad. And in most cases, you can have a plan that isn't an issue, that those will be covered as part of the losses and everything moves forward. So I think that's step number one. Step number two, I mean, on the marketing side, there's so many issues around, you can use options or you can use futures or you can use the cash contracts with the elevators. But, something as simple as maybe not selling everything to one location or one company in case that company has problems with some of the smaller players has now started to have to come into the mind of farmers too. So I think it's something you want to have an all-around plan on, ensuring that the farm will always have enough cash to keep farming the way you want to farm. That's really when your risk management plan didn't work, is when cash flow is so tight that you have to go back to not pre-buying, not forward selling if you don't want to. And those types of things get really expensive, but yet hard to notice.
Yeah, absolutely. So, kind of switching gears here, there's a lot of tech out there right now when it comes to equipment and precision ag and all these different things. Are you implementing any on your farm? Do you see any that you're really feeling will stick, or are they more just something that's here in a buzzword right now?
Yeah, I mean, we use quite a bit of tech. I mean, my John Deere we use every day. We're a granular user, and I think they're strong, but there's also other companies that are strong in that area too. We do use First Pass for our AB lines. We're a couple years into that, just trying it out and see where it goes from there. But I think on a lot of this tech, there's a few things that need to be ironed out. I think a lot of farmers are starting to get pretty sick of a per acre cost when just because you're bigger acres doesn't necessarily mean you're less work. So I think that's something tech companies need to work on. That sure, it might be per acre to a point, but then it needs to be a flat fee, or farmers are just going to get sick of it, to tell you the truth. And I also think there's some little tech that can produce big wins that maybe is some of the first stuff people should look at. So I mean, something as simple as using WhatsApp and Voxer, or one or the other, is your team communication versus text message, radios, and mail, or an email, can really streamline communication on the farm. Something like T-sheets for your time clock for your guys that is GPS and on your phone and ties right into QuickBooks Online. I think we use Trello as a project management board to hopefully keep the office and the shop more aligned and communication streamlined. So those things are all fairly inexpensive and significant value adds to the farm that I think we sometimes overlook and don't spend enough time on, to look for the new flashy tech that's getting advertised better than others.
When it comes to your machinery, are you mostly buying new still? There just seems to be such an uptick in used machinery right now. And now, obviously, it has to do with a number of different things. But on your farm specifically, are you finding that there is still a need for new equipment?
Yeah, so in general, I'm not a new buyer. I'd say less than 5% of my equipment has ever been bought new over the years. We just run net present values, honestly, on everything, and it's always mainly worked out that we're the purchaser of the stuff coming in off the multis, 1 or 2 years old, and we keep it for 2 or 3 and then roll it through. That's been the general concept. My last couple purchases have actually, with the dollar increasing, that my cost per hour to move into something new versus something 1 year old has made sense. So we've went into a couple new pieces here of late, but it really, to me, we break everything down into a cost per hour on all our main machinery, and I use that as the negotiation point. So whether it's 1 year old or 2 years old or brand new, I'm more worried about what it costs me per hour in order to get in there, because that's what we can operate our cost structure on.
So, looking forward to tech, do you see any sort of innovations that we're starting to see now? Do you see any of them really coming forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of them have some time. I'm not a big drone slash AI guy yet. I think it's coming, but it has some time in order to get there. We're probably looking more on some of the efficiency techs around sensors, et cetera, to tell us and help improve, which field are we going to first with the seeders and the combines, because it's drier or more ripe, or which percent is ready, stuff like that. And also, in order to improve our operations on what field is the best timing across the whole field for our herbicide application, fungicide application. That kind of technology is something we're pretty excited about right now. As I said, there's lots coming down the pipeline around, obviously driverless technology and automated AI, drones. But I can't say that there's some that I'm really excited about right now that we're not, currently using on the farm, other than we're just looking at tech to make us more and more efficient. So I've been pretty open that I kind of got a dream to run the farm from 3 computer screens. And on the one screen, I would have my agronomy, soil structure, crop maturity level, to the point that it's modeling exactly where that crop is at. And when we make the call to move agronomy wise, it moves over to our operation screen. So your work order goes out to your operator and what machine and the right path to take to the field and in the field, etc. And it automatically then updates your financial screen from a pro forma to budget. So we're focused more on tech to implement that strategy than we are necessarily, jumping on some of the new trains coming through the station.
So obviously we wouldn't be able to talk about the year without kind of talking about COVID-19. How did it impact your farm? Did you find you were marketing any different? You were managing your farm any different? What sort of impacts did it like, and risk management even? Did it expose any holes there?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the number one thing was obviously just kind of making sure we followed the guidelines when it came to our team and all the systems and issues that we had to implement there. We kind of closed down to the public without appointments in order to keep our farm operating pretty seamlessly. So, I would say in general that as farmers, we were blessed to be maybe the least affected by COVID on a day-to-day functionality standpoint. I'd say the number one thing we found is that, it is burnout of people, even though they're not working longer hours than they have the last couple of years. I mean, 2019 was pretty rough on us with the amount of moisture in the fall, but there's just nothing to look forward to and nothing for your team to recharge on weekends and evenings. So when the best thing in your life literally could be going to work every day, it can get pretty tiring. So I mean, everyone was looking forward to this break for the holidays, and hopefully, we can get a bit more snow and skidoos, et cetera, can be how we recharge. But COVID wise, yeah, we changed our sick day policy and some overtime bank in order to make everybody very comfortable that if they did have to isolate for the 14 days, et cetera, that they wouldn't be financially burdened by that. And once we kind of got through that stage, everybody handled it really well and, followed the guidelines and implemented a few new rules. And we just kind of went about our normal business and tried to be positive that we were, maybe one of the least affected industries compared to a lot. And hopefully we could, help out some of the other industries and businesses around us.
Now, you're someone that often goes to farm shows. You and I would be the type of people that are on the road a lot in the winter. How do you feel that COVID is impacting you and your operation by not being able to go to these shows?
Yeah, so I mean, personally, in general, I kind of like it. I mean, I did have to stay in a hotel a couple of weeks ago, and it was almost a bit refreshing. But hotels are only refreshing 1 or 2 days a month, not 15 or 20. So I don't mind it right now, to be honest. We've used Zoom for a number of years just because of some international business we do. So switching to online wasn't a big deal for me. My kids are 6 and 8, and if there's one thing that I don't like, it's being away from them. So the virtual world has really helped there. When it comes to the shows, I mean, I use the shows more to, book the meetings with everybody that you hope to get that one face-to-face a year with, and everything else you can do virtual. So that's something we've had to work on, maybe spend a little bit of time every other week to just book a Zoom call with those people that you usually catch up with at a show to make sure that everything's kind of on track for the next year. And that part is something that we've dropped the ball at a bit and need to do a better job at in the new year. But personally, I can't say that I've been overly heartbroken. The one thing that, kind of lucky for us is that some of my speaking engagements get to be in pretty cool spots. So we always use those to, take the kids to Nashville or Chicago or Vancouver. And that was kind of how we got our breaks in the winter. It was a couple little mini vacations, and to not have those to look forward to is, I don't know that we've skated as much as we have this winter in our entire life all added together. So either we're going to be better skaters or sick of hockey, one or the other.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's definitely nice to be able to be in areas that you can get out and do those things. So, like you said, it's to be a farmer is not the worst thing right now.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you would like to tell someone who might be watching right now, headed into the 2021 season?
I mean, I'm more of a question guy than a telling guy, but I think the one thing that, maybe surprised me a little bit is just, let's all make sure that we keep a close eye on each other and on our crews when it comes to the mental health aspect. Without the ability to recharge and even just take the kids to a hotel and go water sliding, it's amazing how much we forget that really does recharge everyone's body. So I think as a group, we need to we need to really pay attention to each other and to each other's crews, and then some of our local small businesses that obviously aren't, weathering the storm as good as we are. I think as agriculture, we could really step up and be leaders in that area, and just our fierce independence is one of our biggest positive functions, but it's also our biggest negative. We don't collaborate, and we're all too tough to talk about some of the tough stuff. So I think just make sure over the holiday season you're not afraid to ask. And obviously, if you're having a virtual Zoom call and a couple of beer, that might be a good time to just make sure that everything is going okay with them and their family, and not just about COVID and the weather. Try to get to some of the hard stuff and take care of each other.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a terrific message. I think, like you said, we are fiercely independent, but being able to talk about it isn't one of our strengths. So thank you very much for being on the show today, Kristjan. We are out of time already, and but it's been wonderful to have you on and to hear some of your insight. How can producers get a hold of you if they want to have some more knowledge from you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty active on Twitter, or try to be some days. So it's at Kristjan Hebert on Twitter, but I got a website, KristjanHebert.com and HebertGrainVentures.com, and also MaverickAg.com. Any of the three will lead you down the path to get a hold of me one way or the other. And yeah, I always enjoy conversations. You can learn something from everybody. So it's always nice to hear what other producers are doing and what's worked and what hasn't worked, and share a few ideas.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you very much, Kristjan. And I'm sure we will talk to you in the new year. Have yourself a great Merry Christmas as we are headed into that season very quickly.
Absolutely. You too. Say hi to your dad for me.
I will. Okay, and thank you for all that have joined in today with your questions and comments. It is always terrific to have you along. Like I said, it's been a difficult year, but it has been a lot of fun being able to be in contact with you guys and to see your questions and your comments and your feedback. It's what makes this job so great. So thank you very much for adding a little bit of fun to my day too. I very much appreciate it. And if you're looking for some more RealAg content, of course, our site, www.realagriculture.com, is always booming with new things, but as well, tune in to Sirius XM Rural Radio 147, and we'll have today's Real Ag Radio show on today. We have Becky Parker, Patrick Lemlin, and Ann Wasco, since we regularly have our, every 2 weeks, we have Ann Wasco on to do our beef market update on Fridays, but since Friday is Christmas Day, she is on today. So stay tuned to hear that conversation. It is a good one. And thank you all for joining. We will talk to you all in the new year.